Today it is Wednesday, June 18th. We're halfway through 2025. Our special guest tonight is Carroll County Board of Education member Steve Whisler, as well as a candidate for the Maryland State House of Delegates. Welcome to the show, and our hosts today are Jackie Saxton and David Shepard. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Dwight, and thank you, Steve, for joining us. How are you doing, despite all of the rain going on?
My pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, so we'll jump right in. Before we get into what you have coming down in the future, let's talk about where you're at now. So you're currently serving on the Board of Education. You were elected in 2022, and now you're serving as the Vice President of the Board of Education in Carroll County. So we were talking a little bit before the show about the positive changes that you've been able to make in only 3 years. Can you talk a little bit about that for our audience and tell them about what was the state when you came in and where they're at now?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. And again, just for full disclosure, I'm here representing myself. I'm not here representing the school board or the school system. And my comments are my own. But, when I was elected in 2022, first of all, I walked into a good situation. Our school system historically has always done very well. We routinely rank in the top 3 in math, science, and English language arts repeatedly, year after year after year. We have one of the lowest central office staff to student ratios in the state. We are the lowest out of the 24 jurisdictions. We also have the lowest state funding per pupil and, total funding per pupil. So we are one of the most efficiently run school systems in the state of Maryland, having the lowest operating costs with almost no fat in our central office staff. And every dollar we have is in the school system. We typically, when I took over, we had about 3 to 4% of our teaching staff. Only 3 to 4% were uncertified. They just had a conditional certification. In other words, they have a 2 to 3 year period to get their certification. We had one of the lowest ratios of uncertified teachers in front of our kids statewide. Those things are the reasons why we were so successful. We insist that our teachers stick to curriculum. We insist that they partner with our parents to make sure that students get the most out of their education. And so we also have gotten rid of irresponsible books in our libraries that don't add any academic value. We led the way in that category for our state. And again, I'm just very, very proud of what our school system has accomplished and our teachers and our parents working together for student success.
Well, you mentioned your ratio in terms of the money you're spending and your results are good. Could you hit a couple points as to why maybe that is? Because everyone seems to think you got to pay a lot of money, you got to pump a lot of money into the schools to make them good. And what do you think, again, are the keys to you guys have a great school system, a very good school system, and you spend less money? So what again, do you think are the keys to explain that? If it's not money, then...
Well, the keys are making sure that every dollar you have counts, and then it goes into the school system, and it goes in front of kids. We've seen a 40% increase in state spending in education over the last, several years, 10 years. Yet scores keep going down. And now a lot of that's due to COVID, no doubt, but few jurisdictions have rebounded. We in Carroll, we have rebounded. We're starting to see better scores, because our teachers stick to curriculum. We get rid of politics. We get rid of sociologies in our curriculum and what we do every day. We focus on ensuring kids get the 3 basic, R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, to succeed. We also make sure that we round out our kids with incredible opportunities for academics, incredible opportunities for the fine arts. Our teachers are committed to making sure that they work with parents and kids, to get the best of what we need to get done. And so that's really the recipe. And I just wish other school systems would look at that around the state, because unfortunately they can't. Blueprint is being pushed down on us by the state as a one-size-fits-all solution for every jurisdiction. A couple of years ago, we spent $18 million more dollars than we were required to on special education. Because of blueprint mandates, we're now spending about 14 to 15 million more than we need to on special education because the state is forcing us to repurpose that money to spend it in other areas that we just don't think fit within our system. We're also poised, if we're not careful, to get rid of some really meaningful programs in Carroll County, like outdoor school. We have a rich tradition in Carroll where our sixth graders spend a week, overnight, a week at summer camp kind of setting throughout the school year to get a really good exposure to environmental issues. And they incorporate STEM, mathematics, and science into outdoor environmental things, agriculture, ag science. And we may need to cut that program in a year or two because, again, the state is saying, no, you can't spend your money that way. With Blueprint, you must spend it a different way. We just want to make sure we have local control and parents and teachers deciding where that money goes is why Carroll has been so successful.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy because I can't imagine anything more useful, especially in an agricultural-based community like Carroll County, to have that outdoor time. And it's just so good for students to actually just get outside the classroom for a little bit and get some practical experience. So what other challenges has Blueprint brought on so far, other than them trying to dictate your curriculum? Is this costing more for, other than cutbacks in that? Is it costing more to the taxpayer? What else is going on there?
Yeah, it's really ironic. It's funny. The Blueprint mandates forced upon counties like Carroll. When Blueprint was originally passed, we were told in Carroll County that Blueprint would not cost our local county government anything extra. Well, that was a big fat lie. It turns out now that our local commissioners and our local government must fund 60% of Blueprint costs. So that's really, an unfair thing thrust upon our local residents in Carroll. Another thing we're seeing is that they're telling us how to spend the money we have. We almost released and cut 88 teachers this past year, 88 educators, because of Blueprint mandates. And we were fortunate enough to work out a waiver with the state where we don't have to implement Blueprint requirements fully in Carroll for the next 2 years. But yeah, we were poised to let go 88 teachers this year and 92 next year. That's a significant number. And it's all because they're telling us how to spend our money. We didn't need any more money, but because they want us to spend the money differently, we're not allowed to spend the money on things like reading assistants, math assistants, media clerks, media specialists. We instead have to use that money to purchase physics teachers, math teachers, and we have to use that money that way and put a lot of resources in just a few of our schools instead of spreading out those resources equally, and also equipping our teachers with those valuable resources like math reading specialists, media clerks, media specialists. So that's what Blueprint is doing to not just Carroll County, but counties across the state. They're telling school systems how to spend their money, and school systems are forced to cut valuable support structures around our teachers, like those assistants I talked about. Teachers are finding out very, very quickly, and especially support elements like those reading specialists and math specialists. Those employer groups are finding out very quickly that Blueprint is not good for them. Harper County had to cut summer school this past year because of Blueprint mandates. Howard County is laying off over 100 educators this year, and they laid off more last year. Baltimore County last year laid off over 300 educators, and they're laying off more this year. Montgomery County, before the legislature restored cuts that Governor Moore had proposed, which were responsible cuts, Montgomery County was poised to lose over 1,000 educators if those cuts had not been restored. So even the educators are realizing that Blueprint is not a good thing for them because it's forcing local jurisdictions to repurpose and spend money in ways that force those layoffs and cuts.
That's crazy.
Well, just to give me a little background on Blueprint, I mean, in Virginia, we don't have a similar situation. Is it like Common Core that being pushed nationally and the state has adopted? I mean, who enforced this Blueprint?
Yeah, so Blueprint has, one of the elements of Blueprint is what's called the Accountability Implementation Board, the AIB. So the AIB is one of the pillars of Blueprint that requires counties to report how they spend their money every month. We have really hardcore requirements to prove to them that we're spending the money equitably the way they want us to. And our money is supposed to be concentrated in areas of poverty, which, on paper is a great thing, but it's forcing jurisdictions like us to spend less on special needs, less in certain areas that we think are important to Carroll County. And when you have a county like Carroll that routinely places top 3 academically year after year after year, it's forcing us to pull funds from a majority of our schools to put more funds in those areas of poverty, which they need it, but we're doing that at the detriment of those students in the majority of those schools. So we're going to see higher class sizes in a majority of our schools. We're going to see academic performance fail because academic performance is directly linked to class size. And ironically, Blueprint has nothing to do with academic standards. Nothing in Blueprint affects curriculum. Nothing in Blueprint is tied to an academic deliverable. So if counties like Carroll experience a sliding back in education results because of the way they're making us spend our money, there's not a darn thing we can do about it because we have to implement Blueprint. And Blueprint is about spending money the way they want you to or else.
Yeah.
So we're all very aware that majority of our Democrat legislators, I would wager, in Annapolis are pretty much being controlled by the teachers union. So do you foresee a situation, since this is clearly not benefiting the teachers and many of them are losing their jobs, that there is a chance that the teachers union could speak up and say, hey, actually, we don't want this. Can we roll this thing back? Do you think that could happen?
It can happen. In fact, we saw it happen in our county. Again, we're starting to get a lot more cooperation from our educator union. They actually went to bat for us to help us get a waiver in Carroll County so that we can delay the implementation of Blueprint. Again, I think a lot of them are realizing we don't want to see cuts to our educators and we don't want to see cuts to that valuable support staff that help our educators succeed. I think you're seeing a lot of, there's a lot more appetite in Annapolis to see major changes to Blueprint because other counties are experiencing the same issue. Other counties are seeing their county commissioners and their county councils faced with much, much higher bills related to Blueprint that they can't fund. And they understand, I think, now that these funding estimates just aren't sustainable. But there's an election year coming up in 2026. And I'll even take the words from a former Democrat Senator, Jim Brochin, who, I call a friend. Jim Brochin even said, look, Blueprint is going to bankrupt the state of Maryland. And I think a lot more of his colleagues on that side of the aisle are understanding and realizing that they need major changes to Blueprint. There's major assets and factors of Blueprint like pre-K. They can't afford the pre-K requirements. They can't find enough public-private partnerships so that 50% of the pre-K needs are accomplished by the private sector. They see huge costs associated with dual enrollment and that college costs, including books, are just way too expensive. So they've got to roll back some of the eligibility requirements for dual enrollment. They see the huge costs associated with community schools. And they realize that the funding model that pours a ton of money into special needs just is not realistic and sustainable. So I think you're going to see a lot of appetite for change in Blueprint after the election because they don't want to upset the very powerful teachers union that tends to throw a lot of money in their campaign coffers this close to election season.
And it's unfortunate. This isn't even the first time that the delegation, the Annapolis has had to see the failure in what Republicans have been warning them was going to be a failure before they're like, oh, you know what? You guys were right. Exactly the same thing happened with the juvenile crime bills. They were like, okay, maybe this wasn't such a good idea.
Well, is there any way you can get rid of it if you get elected to the House of Delegates? And I don't know that you want to, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, look, one of the reasons why I'm running is because, first of all, I did 20 years in the Navy. It's in my blood to serve. And it was in my blood to serve on the Board of Education. And I'm so grateful for, the trust and confidence that my Carroll Countyans have put in me to help, keep their school system operating the way it should, that benefits parents and students. And I've learned a great deal about Blueprint and its effect on not just our schools, but our county governments. And I want to get down there in Annapolis to help instill some common sense and just be a voice of reason to try to convince folks on both sides of the aisle that we need some really responsible changes to Blueprint and other things that our state is facing so that we can better serve all of the residents in Maryland, not just those in Carroll County.
So that's actually a great segue. What other things other than education, which you're obviously very passionate and knowledgeable about, do you want to propose in Annapolis?
Well, I think I can really help out our cause in Annapolis because, number one, it takes relationships to get things done. You have to work with people, no matter on what side of the aisle they're on. And one of the things I'm going to lobby for, and I think folks on both sides of the aisle can agree on, is local control. We must ensure that our county governments have local control on a variety of issues and topics, not just education, but another big local control issue for me is zoning. Right now in Carroll County and facing also Frederick County and Baltimore County is this extension cord, if you will, of a power line going from New Jersey to Virginia, and these folks are proposing to come on to land and implement eminent domain to take over land and run this power line that will significantly lower property values and discourage adequate use of our agricultural land, and a lot of it even crosses preserved agricultural land, which we don't want to see. So local control is critical. Our county governments need local control on zoning issues, on education issues, on local property tax, and just stormwater management issues, and how we use land. That's a huge issue, and so I think I can work with colleagues on both left and right to get that done. We also have a lot to get done with regards to law enforcement. One of the greatest challenges facing our state right now is illegal immigration. Maryland has over 375,000 illegal immigrants that costs our entire state $3 billion a year. Blueprint, Blueprint requires $3 billion more a year statewide to fund our education system. But we're spending $3 billion on illegal immigrants every year in this state. And it really puts a strain on our local county governments with regards to, healthcare services, fire, police, teachers, education. So, we really need to lobby our folks on the left to make sure that we implement responsible things that don't attract illegal immigrants to our state. So those are just a couple of the major issues: law enforcement, local control, land use. But those are some of the things I hope to make a difference on when I get down to Annapolis.
Yeah, I don't think you pointed out the cost of illegal aliens or migration. I don't think people realize the cost. That's just my theory. I just, if people realize how much it costs, because you have to educate everyone in this. I mean, it's the federal law, so you have to educate everyone here. So the children, so it becomes very costly. And
and illegal immigration has much more than just that $3 billion price tag I talked about. Mm-hmm. In Maryland, we're giving scholarships, and we're spending dollars that we should be spending on Marylanders. And the people that suffer the most are the low income Marylanders, mm-hmm. and Marylanders in minority groups, because instead of them getting those scholarships, those folks in disenfranchised communities getting that help to go to college, it's going to illegal immigrants. And so, the issue of illegal immigration is an 80-20 issue. 80% of the people think that they should not be here, right and left. So it's an issue, I think, that, we can convince folks on the left and right we need to come together on and reform.
Yeah.
So, with being in Annapolis and being in such a small minority that we do have, our small and mighty Republicans down there, how would you propose working with the other side? And I'm sure you've had to do this a little bit. being on the Board of Education, even though we have Republican control over there, you still have to deal with, I'm sure, some very liberal teachers and parents. So how would you work with the other side to get things done?
Well, first of all, the thing is to listen and empathize with their point of view. I mean, listen, I understand that, things that are done in PG County, Baltimore City, Howard County, they're done a little bit differently. And I get that. But my point of view will be, look, let's make sure we insist on local control, but let's at the same time make sure that we make really terrible bills not so bad. Or look, if you want to pass a bill that looks the way it looks, that's great. But at least let's see if we can work in amendments and concessions that will give counties more local control to do things differently. An example is electric buses. There's for the last few years, they've been trying to implement electric buses statewide. Electric buses won't work in Carroll County because some of our buses travel, 100 miles a day. And buses can't run 100 miles a day on one electrical charge. Or, if there's cold weather, electric buses don't provide the heat, adequate heat for our students in the wintertime. Whereas diesel buses, they generate that heat, warm the buses, so that students go to school in a warm bus as opposed to a cold bus. So there are things that we can work on with folks on that side of the aisle to either make bad bills not so bad, or to at least put provisions in those bills so that we retain local control in counties so that we don't skyrocket costs and we do things that make sense for us in Carroll County or the other local jurisdictions around Maryland.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point if you can try to mitigate, some of the, I only put it that way because, Republicans are in such a minority. So it's good that you can try to mitigate some of the bad bills that may get through. So, yeah. But
I was gonna say, no, are there any bills that you saw last session that if you had been on the floor, if you'd been a delegate at the time, you definitely would have been like, this is, I'm fully against this and this is going to be my hill to die on?
Yeah, there are a couple. There are a couple that I would like to die on. One is just this incredible assault on implementing, irreversible and unconscionable, medical procedures on children. Look, I understand if folks should be allowed to live their lives the way they want to live them, they should be able to love whomever they want to love. But children just do not have the capacity or the ability to understand what is best for them right now. But putting children or subjecting children to, transgender procedures or, medicines or other kinds of concoctions that can have irreparable damage, cause irreparable damage, prevent them from having children. It's just really unconscionable. I think it's one of the greatest tragedies of our time. And we just cannot spend state money on that kind of stuff. It's just very irresponsible in my mind. Another major area is, I am pro-life. I am pro-Second Amendment. And it's really important to me that, we respect life and I become a voice for those folks that, don't have a voice. But those are some issues that, look, I'll talk to anybody about anything, but those are kind of don't cross the line with me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that first point. You even had the Supreme Court come out today and defend the state of Tennessee's choice to ban those procedures on minors. Mm-hmm. So you got precedent there.
Yeah, another issue is parent rights. Yeah, it's really, it dumbfounds me how some people think that they know what's better than a parent.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. Being on the school board, I mention all the time to our staff that, it is not anyone's role in government at any level to tell a parent what's best for their child. It's just a non-starter. Our healthcare professionals in our schools, our counselors, they're not there to practice on kids. They're there to provide for kids when they're there. But anything that is ever done to a child needs to be fully disclosed to a parent, and a parent needs to have the say on what happens with their children at every step of the way. Never, ever keep a secret from a parent, because nobody knows a child better than their parent.
Yeah, we had a big case, as you remember, in Virginia three years ago. It was coming on 4 years, where we had the gubernatorial candidate saying, the Democrats saying, parents have no business telling schools what to teach. And that made the difference in the campaign. So I think the Parents Matter message that you have, and more than a message, it's what you've done on the school board, is very important. So hopefully that can carry you. Even in blue Maryland, you would think that it'd be the sort of same view of the public on parents' rights.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a red or blue thing. That's a parent thing.
Yeah.
No, and again, I say it all the time. It's not a right and left issue. It's an issue of right and wrong.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. But yeah, parents need to be in control. And there's other things that we need to do in this state. We need to lower the cost of doing business in this state. Families, the policies, the tax policies, and the business policies implemented in Annapolis just make it too incredibly expensive to live in Maryland. Businesses are leaving, residents are leaving. The American dream in Maryland is slipping away. And I say children, but young people in Maryland don't have the opportunities that I had at that age. A lot of people in their 20s and even 30s cannot afford to buy a home today. We need more opportunities for folks to purchase homes in this state. We need to do things like lower the costs associated with businesses, so that businesses can hire more people, so that people can earn more money, and so that people can do things like purchase a home, purchase a car. We see a lot of young people today living with their parents into their 20s and 30s. And, the policies and the actions of the left just haven't worked. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are waking up and realizing that today. And I think you're going to see a lot of people, pardon my screen here, a lot of people are going to
up and leave. I think you're right.
They will, yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize here. I think I'm off screen for a second.
We see you just fine, so.
I can see you.
Great. Yeah, my screen just went blank, so.
No worries.
I will. Great.
Well, that, and also, I mean, just in terms of building, and I don't know if there's much you can do at this level either, but you got to get more housing supply, it would seem, on market. I know a lot of people don't like growth and not in my backyard and all that sort of stuff, but it just seems to me that in dealing with housing, you're going to need to boost your supply. I think you're going to need to have more housing.
We do. We need a lot more housing. Developers aren't necessarily evil. One of the things that I tell people all the time.
Yeah.
Being on the school board, I have worked with the development community over the last 3 years to let them know, look, in this area where you think you want to build, our schools are over capacity. Not a good idea. Look in these areas where we have lower enrollment. But we need to partner with the development community. We need to partner with our county commissioners and our county councilmen and our county executives to make sure that we have responsible development in the right areas. We need to respect private property development rights, but at the same time, we need to make sure that they connect with and work with neighbors, because we want to respect their property rights and their values. We don't want to see something pop up that will detract from their quality of life or detract from their property values too.
For example, what they're trying to do in Montgomery County, which is called Thrive 2050, where they're going to get rid of all single-family zoning housing by 2050.
Yeah, again, look, what Montgomery County does, great, I understand. And, the Montgomery County voters need to wake up and realize that, their elected officials make really big decisions that affect their quality of life. But when we see things at the state level happen, like this recent bill on solar panels and implementation of solar panels, the state is taking that right away from those local jurisdictions to make those decisions. And again, one of my big one of the big reasons why I'm running is to make sure that local jurisdictions keep local control. That's huge. People in Annapolis should not be telling folks in Kent County or Garrett County or Montgomery County or Carroll County how to live. That should be locally determined by those residents because it affects them the most.
Well, I definitely think that seems to be the theme of your campaign, right? Is local control, and I love that. So as we reach the kind of end portion of our show, are there any other topics that we haven't covered that you want to cover?
No, the other big thing is just law enforcement. You know, we've seen an assault in Annapolis on our law enforcement. Law enforcement hands are tied at every step of the way, which is unfortunate. We have incredible, just incredible neighbors that, you know, work in law enforcement that protect us every day. We need to ensure that we pass laws that protect victims and empower our police and sheriff deputies to get the job done. You know, we have almost no crime in Carroll County because we have an incredible sheriff and great deputies that work together with our local 8 municipalities to get things done. And again, you know, we need to make sure that they work great hand in hand with our federal law enforcement folks to get the most violent criminals off of our streets.
I'm going to work with ICE.
Got to do it. And we got to do it. And, you know, they're not here to take, you know, everyday citizens off the street. They're here to remove criminals that murder our citizens, that loot our businesses. These folks have created organized crime units that rip off our retailers. But we need to really ensure that we reverse this terrible trend we see in Annapolis of you know, neutering our law enforcement. We just can't do that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Steve, we see your website listed right under there, whistlerforcarroll.com. What can you tell us? When's your next event? Where can people find you? Where can they go to donate other than your website?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. We've had an incredible surge in donations. I actually met my quarterly fundraising goal. You know, our goal was to raise 40 to 50,000, and we're more than a quarter of the way there, thanks to the generous support of folks. But whistlerforcarroll.com, we're going to change that to Whistler for Delegate very soon. You can use either one. We'll have a point there. But, you know, the 5th Maryland district incorporates 2/3 of Carroll County and a small sliver of Frederick County. So I don't want our Frederick County friends to think that I'm forgetting them. I'm not. But my next event will probably be in September, October timeframe. You know, we have a tremendous amount of support. I have several members of the House of Delegates that already support me. I will come out with more endorsements later as the campaign rolls along. But, you know, just, you know, if you can donate, chip in, you know, let me know if I can, you know, appear in your area, you know. But all of these things are very, very important to just giving folks access to my message and my mission, which is to implement common sense solutions in Annapolis.
Absolutely. I love that. Mm-hmm. Dave, anything you want to plug today?
Well, I was going to ask, but you sort of touched on this. Well, I was just going to ask Steve, your district, but you sort of described it. You still have part of Frederick, so.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So.
And that sliver of Frederick is near the city of Mount Airy.
Okay. All right, good. So your district's good, I take it, not just with good people, but I meant politically, pretty good district.
It is, yeah. You know, the 5th district is one of Maryland's most conservative jurisdictions.
All right, good.
You know, so it's, but again, you know, we need people that will work with folks on both sides of the aisle, but have the backbone to keep the values and not waffle on our values. Because all too often we see conservatives waffle, and we need folks that are fiscally responsible. You know, I have a background in business. You know, I used to own with several others, you know, a business, and I put people to work in this state. I did 20 years in the Navy. I've also been on the board of directors of Maryland's largest credit union. You know, that credit union today is a $4 billion credit union. So I have a background in finance. I've led a lot of nonprofits in my day. My day job is currently in the healthcare industry. So I help manage a major health plan for military personnel in 5 mid-Atlantic states and DC. So, you know, I want to use that experience and that expertise to represent the 5th district on those things that matter most to us in Annapolis.
Sounds good.
That's awesome. All right. Well, from a YR plug standpoint, we have 2 line dancing fundraisers coming up. The first one being in Frederick County at the oh goodness, blanking on the name of the location. Here we go. The new Midway Fire Hall, and that's going to be on July 12th from 7 to 9 p.m. That one's 6 to 8. Check the flyer. And then we have another one on July 17th, and that one is from 7 to 9 p.m. at Redmond's Lodge in Fruitland, Maryland, down on the Eastern Shore. So if you're free, come out. It's $25. It's going to be a whole lot of fun, and it's going to help us send our delegation to Nashville. So come out for that. And to everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. Dave, thank you as always for co-hosting with me. And Steve, thank you for coming out and sharing your message. I think you have a very inspiring campaign going on, and we look forward to helping you out. And everybody, please join us next week for another great guest and a great show. Have a great night.
Thank you.
See you later, Steve. See you later, Jackie.
Let's go down to Masoni's, where Italian cuisine shines. Let's go down to Masoni's, we'll have a good old time. Homemade pasta at Masoni's, sauces fresh and fine. Good friends gather at Masoni's. Join us anytime. Taste the pizza at Masoni's with flavor so divine. Bring your good times, appetite. Join us